The United Church of Canada has a long history of advocacy. From the pulpit, we are taught the lessons of compassion and caring, seeking truth, and using our voices for those in need. At the same time, as part of the United Church, we have been educated through the long history of our magazine, the United Church Observer, now Broadview. As the new title says, we are called to see more of the life around us. We are called to action by the stories of passion, joy, and tragedy. Today, we are pleased to have with us the current editor and publisher of Broadview, Jocelyn Bell. In her daily work life, she leads a team of individuals that together produce the excellent magazine that speaks to our hearts and minds. Jocelyn's job includes everything from developing and editing stories to creating budgets and setting strategies. In this day of paper, publishing, this truly has been a job needing patience, energy, and a personal passion. Jocelyn began working with the magazine in 2006 as its managing editor when the magazine was called the United Church Observer. She became the editor and publisher in January 2018, and her most proud accomplishment to that date has been relaunching the magazine as Broadview in the spring of 2019. For this effort, she was awarded the Editor's Grand Prix from the National Magazine Awards, the first faith-based magazine editor to win the prestigious prize. Congratulations. Today, she can be proud of the excellent quality of each page of the magazine that reaches our homes. Please welcome this talented, award-winning editor and publisher, Jocelyn Bell, as our fourth Sunday seminar speaker. Over to you, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much. That's a lovely, lovely introduction. So thank you so much for having me here today. And I have lots to tell you about. So I say we just get started. Okay. So in February 2019, a letter from a reader appeared in my inbox. As I read the first few lines, my skin began to prickle. "You will no doubt think me an old fuddy-duddy against any changes," it began. The old fuddy-duddy was reacting to an editorial in which I announced the upcoming change from the United Church Observer to Broadview. The letter went on to say we were ruining the reputation of a venerable publication and thoughtlessly making change for change's sake. While I inwardly bristled, I also sympathized. I too grew up in the United Church, for which our publication was named. The Observer was always on the coffee table at home. Freelancing for the magazine gave me my start in journalism. Naturally, the decision to rebrand the magazine was scary, risky, and the cause of a lot of tossing and turning in the night for me, for the staff, and for the board of directors. But change for change's sake, it was not. I'm just seeing how to switch my slides here. Just a second. Just a minute. You know what? Just a second. This is not right. Let me escape for 1 second. Sorry. Because sorry about that. You know what? I pulled up a previous draft of this presentation, so we're going to do this again properly.
No worries.
And here we go. Yeah. My apologies.
Folks that are on the session, if the images are a little too small on your screen, there's an option at the top of your Zoom window to fit to window, and it'll show up properly on your laptop or your iPad.
Okay, we're in business again here. Everybody can see that again?
Not quite.
No?
We just see
Okay.
you for now.
Okay, hang on, then we'll go back to, I have to share my screen again, sorry. We'll go back to the Zoom meeting. Should be here. And then I'll go to share screen again. Share, and then here. Cancel. And then I'm going to make that into full screen. How's that?
Perfect.
We're good. Okay. So here's the central business problem that we've been contending with for the past 50 years. The name United Church Observer has tied us to a church community that's been declining ever since the 1960s. Due in large part to secularization and an aging membership, the denomination has been closing 1 or 2 churches per week. While this audience has carried us for a long time, our projections showed that we couldn't continue to solely rely on the good people in the United Church pews for subscriptions. In this graph, the orange line at the top shows the decline in United Church members from 2004 to 2016. The next blue line shows the decline in United Church supporting households. And in the lower graph, you can see the observer's subscription loss. All three lines follow almost the same trajectory, except that our loss is steeper. 2016 is the year when this chart ends, and it's also the year when the Presbyterian Record ceased publication. And for us, that was a real wake-up call. Would we meet the same fate? We decided to find out, so we hired a consultant named Sharon McCauley, who looked at all of our financial data, made lots of charts, and then delivered some startling news. I like to think of Sharon's report as our come to Jesus moment. Sharon told us that if we didn't change course, we'd be closed by 2024. Of course, in our tradition, a come to Jesus moment isn't just about facing hard news, but also about a last chance to redeem yourself, or maybe to reinvent yourself. And in that sense, knowing that death is certain unless you change is actually life-giving. It's creative. When the biggest risk is in not acting, then you suddenly feel spurred to all kinds of action, and the great ideas start flowing. As a quick side note, it was not long after this come to Jesus moment that I applied to be the editor and publisher of Broadview. I had been on staff since 2016 and had a pretty good handle on things. But you might think it would be foolhardy to take on the leadership of a publication in this kind of trouble, but I was really excited by the opportunity to overhaul the business and try new things. But back to our predicted end date in 2024. So we're staring death in the face, and what do? We start to ask ourselves hard questions, like, what does it mean to be a faith-based magazine in 21st century Canada? What's our mission? Is our mission to serve the membership of the United Church of Canada, or is it to bring the values of progressive Christianity into the Canadian conversation? Well, the answer, I think, is a bit of both, but the emphasis is shifting. Just like the definition of what it means to be the church in the 21st century is shifting. At Bloor Street, you know very well what it means to be the church in today's context. But what does it mean to be the church magazine, or a church magazine, in a multicultural, multi-faith country? What does it look like when a magazine steps beyond the church walls and engages a community? These are big questions, and we continue to wrestle with them today. Also, taking faith out of the equation for a moment, what does it even mean to be a magazine in the digital era? One of the first things I did as editor and publisher was to shift the culture of how we understand our work and how we talked about it with others. I made this diagram, and I realize now that it looks like the coronavirus. That's not what it is. It's that comes later. But for many decades, we thought about our work at the Observer as being about publishing a print magazine. That was our business. We were in the business of selling and publishing print magazines. And in the blue diagram, in the old model, the magazine is at the center and everything else supports that primary activity. And in that old model, we also measured our success by the number of print subscriptions we could sell in a given year. But I wanted to change that thinking. So in the red diagram, I made our audience the focus of everything we do. We are a media organization that serves a niche audience in multiple ways, one of which is a print magazine. Putting the audience at the center of our business helped us remember our calling, but it also freed up our thinking. We started to consider the multitude of ways we could engage with our audience and how all of those various touch points could work together to make up a sustainable business model. Then I wrote a mission statement to keep us on track. Of course, we didn't have a name yet, so when I wrote this, so it says, the new magazine exists to serve a niche audience of progressive Christians, as well as those who share progressive Christianity's core values. We understand this means being both introspective and outward-looking. It requires us to examine our beliefs and values and to live and act accordingly. It calls us to engage deeply with the justice issues of our day and to believe that hope lies in caring profoundly for one another and for our planet. We serve this audience through multiple platforms, including a print magazine, a digital presence, events, and more. So that was basically some of the internal thinking that we did initially around mission and identity. We also did a SWOT analysis. SWOT, as you probably know, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this too helped us see that even though the projections looked bleak, we did have some strengths. First, we're editorially independent. Unlike most church magazines, we have the freedom to change without seeking permission from the mothership. Second, we had some money in the bank. We're a registered charity, and through our Friends Fund, we've built up a healthy nest egg over several decades. Third, our digital audience was growing, suggesting, we hoped, that there was a larger audience for the kinds of stories we like to publish. Fourth, our board of directors supported the need to make change and was ready to act and invest before the situation became urgent. And finally, our subscribers are loyal. They were reading The Observer cover to cover, sending us letters, and renewing their subscriptions each year, except when old age got in the way. So with some big picture thinking and analysis done, everyone was feeling pretty excited to move forward. But before we got too far ahead of ourselves, we decided to do some market research. In spring 2018, we worked with Clarence Poirier at Strategic Content Labs, which is a branch of St. Joseph's Media. And we surveyed two groups. The first was our Observer subscribers, and we reached them through an e-blast newsletter to our list, and we had a bit over 1,300 respondents. And the second group was our potential new subscribers, and we reached them through a Maru Blue online survey. We had a bit over 1,000 respondents. And we didn't just go to the general public in Canada, we had some criteria. In order to even access our survey, they had to first of all agree that they read at least one magazine per month, that they identified as somewhat or very spiritual, and they had to click not on the option of saying that they were very socially conservative. We wanted to talk to people who we felt were in our universe and not talk to people who would, not even have an interest in a magazine, for example. We asked many, many questions in the surveys, but the two overarching questions were, is there an external audience beyond the United Church pews for a magazine focused on social justice, ethical living, and progressive Christian faith? And two, will current United Church subscribers accept the change to a repositioned and rebranded magazine? The answer to both questions was yes. The survey identified a potential market universe of 306,000 Canadians who would definitely subscribe. Of course, the challenge is actually finding them and making them an offer. And then among our Observer subscribers, 83% said they would definitely or likely renew to a new format. So 83% sounds pretty good, right? The problem is that there is also 17% of subscribers who thought they might not like the format. And you'll remember that I listed previously that loyal subscribers were one of our strengths. Well, here's the flip side of that same coin. Observer readers love the magazine as is. They weren't asking us to change. And so losing 17% of loyal subscribers was very worrying. So again, we did some soul searching. Could we create a magazine that appealed to a new audience without alienating our loyal subscribers? Could we communicate the need to change in such a way that our subscribers would get on board? Did we have the guts to deal with some backlash from those who would not support us? And more importantly, did we have the courage to step out of our bubble, to place ourselves next to the very best Canadian magazines and say to Canada, we're not just a church magazine for church members, forever preaching to the choir. We are worthy of joining the national dialogue. Three voices helped me steady myself and find that ground of hope and courage amid anxiety, risk, and fear. The first voice is that of Brene Brown, author, researcher, and speaker. She says, this speaks to me at my age particularly. She says, midlife is when the universe gently places her hands upon your shoulders, pulls you close, and whispers in your ear, I'm not screwing around. Time is growing short. There are unexplored adventures ahead of you. You can't live the rest of your life worried about what other people think. You were born worthy and of love and belonging. Courage and daring are coursing through your veins. You were made to live and love with your whole heart. It's time to show up and be seen. The second voice is Reverend Ted Harrison, a United Church minister from North Bay, who shortly after I announced the upcoming change wrote this note. Please know, amidst the slings and arrows, that you have so many hearts and prayers on your side. We will sustain you with our own hopefulness. What you do is a bold and faithful step of ministry. It is a step for which you have been groomed and prepared by years of experience, experiment, and perhaps missteps. If what you are doing is sin, then sin boldly, for you do it out of wisdom, faith, and trust. And of course, you may recognize that sin boldly comes from Martin Luther. And the third voice is that of Amelia Earhart. I'm a big fan, and I have a big poster of her in my office. She said, decide whether or not the goal is worth the risks involved. If it is, stop worrying. So we decided the risk was worth it. We tried not to worry, and we forged ahead. But there were three major riddles to be solved along the way. Riddle number one, what do you call it? From the get-go, we knew that a name change was in order. If we were serious about engaging readers outside the United Church, we couldn't go out with a name that signaled a members-only publication because it stops potential non-United Church readers from engaging with our content. There is also precedent for name changes in our 190-year history. This would not be the first time the publication had rebranded to evolve with the times. And so we hoped our loyal subscribers would understand and come to accept the decision to rename the Observer. After that, it was open season on magazine names. And for about 2 months, we brainstormed words, read thesauruses, kept notes at our bedside tables, voted as a staff, and whittled the list of several hundred names down to 10, among them Broadview. And the 10 names were then tested through that market research that I mentioned previously. Broadview, I'm sure all of you know, is the name of a major street near our office in Toronto, so named because it offers a sweeping view of the city's downtown looking across the Don Valley. For us, the word signaled the kind of open-mindedness and inclusivity that we share with our readers. It countered the idea that religion has to be rigid and dogmatic. It sounded like the name of a magazine with both a solid past and an exciting future. And in that market research, it tested very well among our current subscribers and our potential new audience. So we went for it. Riddle number two, who is Broadview for? I find it helpful to think of our audience as a Venn diagram of overlapping circles, one larger than the other. In the big circle are our current readers, United Church members, of whom the majority are women, 65 or older, living in a town or small city with no kids at home, faithful, left-leaning, very engaged citizens. Think of the Raging Grannies, for example. In the smaller circle are our potential new readers, as identified through market research. They're people who consider themselves Christian, but may not attend church. Slightly more of them are male than female. They're between the ages of 50 and 64. They live in big cities. They're spiritual, left-leaning, very engaged citizens. Think of maybe a high school social studies teacher. But Venn diagrams are always about the sweet spot, the place where the circles overlap. And in this case, the sweet spot is shared values. What these two groups have in common is a love of lifelong learning, belief in equality and inclusion for all, concern for the environment, belief in the importance of charitable giving. They like to read stories about human rights and social issues, human interest and inspiration, religion, the environment, culture, and well-being. Their faith, however they define it, is important to them. And so it's these values that we try to serve in our editorial. Riddle number 3, what is Broadview about? Our cover tagline is spirituality, justice, and ethical living. This has changed from our previous tagline, faith, justice, and ethical living, for one simple reason. In our market research, spirituality tested better than faith with both groups. To my mind, the words spirituality, justice, and ethical living resonate whether you're a faithful Christian or not. For a non-Christian, spirituality is about the inner life. Social justice is about engaging with the issues of our day. And ethical living is about values-driven choices you make in your daily life. For a Christian, it's similar, except that how we understand the inner life, the ethical life, and the imperative to engage with the justice issues is informed through the scriptures and the example we see in Jesus. For a Christian, the tagline spirituality, justice, and ethical living can be understood as Christianity, Christianity, and Christianity. We try to touch on all 3 subjects in every section of every Broadview edition. I decided here to give you a sneak peek into our next issue, the June 2021 issue. So the features that are coming up in this issue: for spirituality, we have a feature about one of Canada's first openly transgender Anglican priests, a justice feature about the federal government's neglect of a Canadian inmate who died in a Florida prison, and an ethical living feature about how municipalities are fighting the climate crisis. In truth, I think any one of these stories could have been published in the Old Observer, but if I had to state the main difference between our editorial strategy then and now, I'd say that before, when we were crafting stories about faith or ethics, we nearly always asked United Church sources for comment or interpretation. Now we go to Anglicans, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Mennonites, Roman Catholics, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, philosophers, and United Church ministers and theologians. We still identify as Christian, but we believe that truth can be found in other denominations and other faiths, as well as our own. And that belief, by the way, is very much in line with United Church theology. In 2007, the United Church produced a document about United Church-Muslim relations called That We May Know Each Other. It reads, "We believe the Church can continue to affirm its own distinctive self-identity while affirming that other faiths and traditions have their own self-understanding. The Bible teaches that the word and wisdom of God are not limited to Christians, and the Spirit of God is free and faithful. We therefore affirm and cherish the differences between traditions as gifts of God, which can be life-giving and transformative." Okay, so in 2019, we finally launched Broadview, and it was, we created this wonderful video, and I'm going to hope that the sound comes through. If it doesn't come through, it's okay, because it's just fun music with background. But we're going to see this video that we made to celebrate the launch of Broadview. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go to the next slide then. There we go. Were you able to hear it? Can you give me a thumbs up? Did you hear it or no? Yeah, good. I love that song. I found it so catchy. So For the average reader watching from the outside, the changes at Broadview look mainly like a new name and a new design for our print magazine and a refreshed website. But I want you to know that almost every aspect of our business was changed at the same time. I won't read this list, but you can see that everything from advertising to donations to our investment was modernized or updated in some way. And each one of these items could be the topic of a whole presentation. Has Broadview been a success? One way to measure is with reader satisfaction. 2 months after our relaunch, we sent out a reader survey to gauge reaction. 700 people responded, and the overwhelming majority said they would renew their subscriptions to Broadview. Among the toughest group, those who told us in our 2018 market research survey that they were unhappy about the proposed changes and were unlikely to resubscribe, we saw converts. 85% of that group said the new magazine met or exceeded their expectations. Another way to measure success is in subscription sales and renewals. In the 3 years leading up to our rebrand, we were losing an average of 8.6% of our subscribers each year. In 2019, after the launch, we lost only 1.5%, and I count that as a victory. But that exciting time of launching Broadview in spring of 2019 does seem like a long time ago, doesn't it? As 2020 rolled around, we started to plan a party to mark our 1-year anniversary. And we thought, wow, we just made it through so much change and a lot of hard work and some really challenging years. 2020 will be so much more relaxing. Well, you know what comes next. The COVID-19 pandemic hit. We canceled the party, moved all of our operations into our living rooms, kitchens, and bedrooms, and managed to keep putting out the magazine and posting stories to the website without skipping a beat. Far from relaxing, 2020 and 2021 for that matter, has felt like a constant roller coaster ride. On the downside, subscriptions and advertising revenues dropped as individuals and businesses tightened their belts. On the upside though, the donors to our Friends Fund have been exceedingly generous. Government grants have bolstered us and our web traffic has increased. Last year, as was mentioned, I won the Editor's Grand Prix from the National Magazine Awards. And this year, we won the Best Magazine category from both the Associated Church Press and the Canadian Christian Communicators Association. And all of these things encourage us in our work. While we isolated, we also wanted to build community and a sense of connection around Broadview. And the result of that effort was the launch of Broadview's National Online Reading Club. With every issue, we now host a wonderful online evening featuring a conversation with our writers and the subjects of our stories. We're getting between 100 and 150 people to these events and lots of very positive feedback. So if anyone is interested in joining us, I'll post a link at the end, but our next reading club is on Monday, June 7th at 7 p.m. So that's a little plug for you. In another action inspired by the restrictions of social distancing, we compiled a list of online worship services being offered by churches across Canada. People have enjoyed checking out services at other churches, and congregations have enjoyed seeing new faces from all over the world on Sunday mornings. On our website, this page was one of the most clicked pages of 2020. And quick note, Bloor Street United is not on this list, but I will tell you how to get on it later. Although we've completed our transition from the Observer to Broadview, if COVID has taught us anything, it's that we must continue to evolve and adapt, to make hard decisions, play to our strengths, focus on our priorities. A quote that has helped me work through the challenges of the past year comes from Jim Collins' book, From Good to Great. He writes, "Productive change begins when you confront the brutal facts. You must maintain unwavering faith that you can and will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties, and at the same time have the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be." I like that quote, and being a journalist, I tend to be more of a brutal facts person than an unwavering faith person. But I have to tell you, this pandemic has shown us that Broadview's readers have unwavering faith in us, and we draw so much strength and courage from them. So this brings me to the end of the ongoing story of Broadview's transformation. But before I give up the podium and open the floor for discussions, I was sent a few advanced questions to help me prepare my comments. So I want to address some of those because they may be on your mind. First is the question about digital. How is Broadview navigating the digital era? This could be a whole presentation in itself. So I just want to make clear this is maybe the executive briefing. First, I'm fully confident and acknowledge that there will come a day when digital will reign and print will be obsolete. The writing is certainly on the wall. Print is declining across all media sectors. But right now, we are in a transition between print and digital, and there are lots of interesting ways to respond to this. For simplicity, I've lumped the options for legacy magazines into 4 categories, and there are lots of variations within each category. So first of all, some former print magazines have gone fully digital. Money Sense, for example, gave up its print edition in 2017. Many magazines are offering print plus digital subscriptions with variations on pricing, format, and access. Examples include Reader's Digest, Chatelaine, Maclean's, and Cottage Life. Typically, these magazines have well-established brands, large audiences, younger audiences, and they're owned by big media companies that have deep pockets, large staffs, and economies of scale. Next up are print plus digital memberships, and the best example I know of is Toronto Life. It offers a print subscription and an Insiders Club, where for $70 a year, you can access workshops, product discounts, giveaways, contests, and much more. And finally, there are magazines offering print subscriptions and free online content. This is where Broadview currently sits. And by the way, so do magazines like Walrus, Canada's History, and Maisonneuve. So why are we in that category? Well, we want to continue to encourage print subscriptions because they are our greatest source of revenue. Secondly, as a new brand, we have a long history, but for most people, we are a new brand. We want people to discover Broadview without restrictions like paywalls. So for the past couple of years, our focus has been on developing and growing that new audience through improved search engine optimization, various social media strategies, better site navigation, and more. As a result of this strategy, we are seeing growth in brand awareness and engagement, in online donations, in online advertising revenue, and in print subscriptions acquired online. So that's a very quick strategy of or very quick snapshot of our digital strategy. Still, 2 years after our relaunch, it may be time to reconsider this strategy and decide whether a different model could work just as well, if not better. So this year we are exploring and researching the questions, what is the best model for Broadview? Can we earn more revenue from a different model? Or how many Broadview readers want this option to have a digital subscription? In Canada, from Vivid Data Source 2019, 63% of magazine readers read their magazines exclusively in print. 34% read a combination of print and digital, and 3% read digital only. So that's the digital piece. Another question that was sent to me ahead was, how do we choose our stories? Well, story ideas come to us from many, many sources. Pitches from freelance writers is probably the top way. Suggestions from readers, we go out and invite readers to pitch stories, and that's been especially important as we try to increase the number of freelancers from equity-seeking groups. Broadview staff, of course, have lots of great ideas. We get media releases, and we're always watching news, trends, reading books, following social media. We choose our stories at a story meeting on every Wednesday as a group, and then for some of the smaller, shorter pieces, editors make the selection for their own sections. Another question, what stories have had the most response since you became Broadview? And to answer this, I checked into which stories had the most clicks online. And here are the top 5. Number 5, how my husband and I spent our final hours together. That was a personal story about medical assistance in dying. Number 4, coronavirus comments expose underbelly of ageism, ableism. Number 3 is unraveling the myth of Mary Magdalene. Number 2, Warm Welcome, the Belgian city that opens its homes to people with mental illness. And number 1, how the Ojibwe brought their horses back from the brink of extinction. And finally, how can readers support Broadview? There are really so many ways to engage with us. I won't read this list, but I will add links in the chat later if I can remember how to do that. And I just want to put a special plug in for the last item, which is tell us your story ideas. We want to know what's happening in your life at Bloor Street and beyond, and what you find interesting and what stories you would like to see in Broadview. And that's everything that I had. So thank you so much for your attention, for your interest, for spending time on a beautiful sunny day with me. And I'm happy to have some discussion time. Yeah, regarding the balance, the mix of positive versus negative, in simple terms, positive versus negative, that's something that we had been noticing ourselves. And, it's kind of a funny sensibility about journalists. I think we're looking for the problems that we want to highlight and that kind of thing. But we actually took a really interesting workshop in January from the Solutions Journalism Network, which has really kind of helped us shift our thinking about, how do you present, even if when you're presenting problems, let's present the solutions and focus on the solutions to the problem, rather than just leaving everybody with the problem and there's nothing to be done about it. Or just, you don't want to come away feeling like, oh my gosh, there's nothing you can do about that. You want to come away feeling there are things you can do about it. So, and then we've also tried to mix in some more lighthearted type, like the clowning piece that we had recently was a more positive type of piece. So yeah, we are aware that sometimes things can be a little grim. And so we are trying to mix in, some more positive pieces. Yeah, and that's why I emphasized we want story ideas. We don't, we're only a team of about, well, there's 11 or 12 staff altogether, and we're all in this city. So, we find out when you tell us, and we find out through, we have Google News alerts that if anything's written about a United Church in any other media and it's online, we'll see it.
Oh.
We follow, regional newsletters and things like that, but there's always great stories that we don't even hear about. So thank you. And I definitely encourage everyone, if you have an idea, send it and we'll take a look. But that's a good one. I like that. Yeah, and she's been doing, that's the e-newsletter that you're referring to that comes out on Fridays. And this year she decided to take it to the next level and write a short piece every week, just to give people who receive the newsletter a little bit of extra, something that they can't get anywhere else, an exclusive little bit, to encourage more e-newsletter subscriptions and get people opening it more. And so yeah, every week she writes a short, thoughtful piece, and it's amazing. Well, I went to Queen's and I studied English. And at the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a living. I just thought maybe I'd be a teacher or something. And then one day, I joined a bunch of different things on the university campus, and I realized that's harder to do now with COVID. But I just joined a bunch of stuff, and some stuff I liked and some stuff I didn't. But one day I walked into the Queen's Journal newspaper, and somebody showed me CP Style, which is it's a style guide, which I really liked. And I also just loved, I got my first assignment. It was a review of a piano concert. I also play piano. And I just love that, I wrote it, and then it was in the paper the next day and my name was there, and it was just this amazing, I don't know, it was an amazing thing. And then I also really felt like the people that were hanging out at the Queen's newspaper, they were just my type of people. I love their sense of humor. I love their ambition. I just thought they loved writing. They loved finding out things. They loved chasing down facts. And I don't know, I just felt like I finally found something, like a light came on. And so then I went to Ryerson for journalism and studied there for 2 years, and then went on my way with internships and eventually getting into jobs. But yeah, I guess my advice would be, join things on your campus if you can, if they're available right now. And I know that's harder, but join whatever you can to show that you're interested and to start to gain that work experience. And because I also read a lot of resumes for internship programs, and it's the students who are really showing that they're taking advantage of the different things that they could be doing on campus that catch my eye. And then the students who, they start out as a contributor to the newspaper, but now they're the assistant news editor, and now they're the news editor. So they've been promoted by their peers. That stands out to me as well. So, yeah. We do write about them now. We write about, like I mentioned, our next issue has a big feature about the first openly trans Anglican priest. So we do write about other faiths. We try to get, the marketing way to do that is to try to get the list. So we tried to get the list from the Presbyterian Record so we could, they wouldn't give it to us, but we did manage to get, those postcards that fall out of magazines and use them as bookmarks.
Yeah.
We did manage to get some postcards into the last Presbyterian Record. But yeah, I mean, it's challenging to try to get in. So one thing that we're doing with some pretty good success right now is we have a Broadview, one of those postcards that falls out of your magazine. Postcard insert is going into the Anglican Journal Faith Today, which is more evangelical, but hey, if, maybe among the evangelicals, there's some people who are interested in less evangelical kinds of Christianity. And then some of, the Walrus and other publications have also taken our postcards. A lot of the faith-based magazines wouldn't take our postcard. And I think it's because they felt that they would lose, like even, we're going to pay for it. They felt they would lose subscribers, or they feel that we're too liberal. So we're kind of caught a lot of times, because when we want to partner with faith-based organizations, we're too liberal. And we want to partner with secular organizations, we're too religious. And so, but we're finding inroads, we're finding people who want to do stuff with us, and they are out there. So we keep asking and knocking on doors and seeing what we can do. Another thing that we did to try to encourage people to, like, I don't know if there's a perception that we don't want to hear stories because maybe the last time you tried, we were like, well, maybe not that one, because we do pick and choose still. And so I don't know if that leaves people with the impression that we're not interested because we didn't choose their story last time. But at the bottom of our Friday newsletter that goes out, it says something like, please send us your story ideas, we want to know. But we always, when we see it on a local CBC website and then we didn't hear it, we're like, oh, we would have done that one, we would have. And why did they tell it to CBC? They thought of media, but they didn't think of us first. And so that we're like, oh. So we're trying to overcome that too. And but I appreciate, it would be great if more United Church people felt that try Broadview first. That would be great. I would love that. One of the things that we considered was, like, one of the ideas that we considered was, how, the way Broadview's, the magazine is structured right now, is kind of general interest, and then you have United Church in focus. And we wondered if we could do a model where you have, that general interest stuff, and then you do the Presbyterian Record or the Anglican Journal or the this and that. And so, whatever denominations we want to partner with could have their denominational section, and you just switch it out depending on the magazine. But I think there was well, first of all, the red tape with other publications, like, because they are closely affiliated with their churches, they are essentially communications vehicles for their churches. They're not independent journalism. So there's some very important differences there. And the approvals that they have to get to publish things, it's quite different. But then there was also concern that, is that going to mean that we can't do a story about the openly trans Anglican priest
Right.
because these people are going to feel offended about that. And the fact that they don't even sometimes want to put our postcard in their magazine or something like that tells you that it would be actually that was kind of the first idea that we started with, and it just was like, oh, this is a lot more complicated and harder to pull off. Upcoming, the Citizens for Public Justice organization, which is Christian based. And anyway, they have a big conference coming up, which we're sponsoring their conference. And with that sponsorship, they're advertising on our website and in our e-newsletter, and then we're getting, our logo and stuff. But the other thing that we're going to get to do with that is I'm going to be interviewing Romeo Saganash, as he's one of their keynote speakers, and talking about the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So yeah, we do things like that. And there's lots of different ways that we're partnering with other magazines to share content online. For example, we get them to share some of our stories, we share some of theirs, and each of us gets to reach each other's audiences.
Right.
With other magazines, everyone's struggling, everyone needs each other. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you have ideas of particular things, I'd love to hear them. And I'm just trying to think. We have a piece coming up that's got some interesting history, a history piece coming up. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think maybe we're not, we try to not be like a too academic. Maybe veer more towards accessibility, and you may be craving something a bit more academic, and that maybe just, we can veer into those territories too. So I hear what you're saying. Post at least 60% of our articles from the print online. Some of these things that we don't post online, it's not going to be the Black Jesus. The whole Black Jesus will be online. That's a major feature for us. We delay it a bit, and I would suspect that other magazines also delay. But for example, some stuff that you can't get online. I'm just going to hold this up. Can you see that? This is our snapshot section. It's front of the book. This is a really tiny, short, history piece. This is a graph, and the whole section, like the section works as, snackable little bits. It's designed for magazine. It's the medium it's designed for. And if we put, this month in 1941, Pearl Harbor happened, as a standalone online, it just doesn't, nobody clicks on it, doesn't work in the same way. So it's made for magazine. But all of the things that, we do post all of our major features. We delayed a bit because we are a subscription driven magazine right now. We're not an advertising driven magazine as other magazines are. We're subscription driven. It's our biggest source of revenue. And so the decision was made to show you that you're not getting all of it online. And some magazines, they just don't tell you that you're not getting all of it, but you may not be. But we decided to show people that they don't get all of it, so that in order to encourage print subscriptions. But I as I addressed in my presentation, I hear you. I think it's important. We just haven't been able to look at it and to figure out if it's a model that we can work, because we are very small. We don't have a big organization behind us. Our digital team is, basically one person, and right now a temporary person. So this year, I did add another digital strategy person in as a 1 day a week. And then we also received a grant for $14,000 to work on things like our search engine optimization. It's just, there's so many competing priorities, and we're such a small team, and we had to cut our budget this year because of the lack of funding. So I wanted to put more money into digital this year, as we reduced our print frequency and save some money that way, but I just couldn't, there wasn't enough. So I hear you, and I want to explore it and do it and see if what is the best model. Maybe it's something like Toronto Life, where we have print subscriptions and a membership where we can offer neat things through a membership. Or maybe it's, but then there's also questions about if if you were offering digital subscriptions, then you'd have to restrict some of the digital content that people can access. Otherwise, why would you pay for it? So there's some downsides to that too. But I hear you, but it's where we are right now.